Rookies.
Get that a little. Is your intro music. 3 Guys, Many Games, Week 2 college season. We got a very special episode today. We're joined by one of the legendary figures in the game of lacrosse, somebody that's just about won at every level you could imagine, coaching now at the University of North Carolina in their resurgence year this year. We were talking a little bit about before we got on. It's looking good so far. Let's welcome the very great friend Dave Pietramala.
Petro!
Hey, Petro in the house.
I'm Steve
fellas?
Sombrato. We've got our man Rob Smalley back. We got the GOAT Vinny Sombrato here, and what a day! This is just a fantastic. We've been planning this one for a while, Dave. I thank you for coming on. We're really looking forward to talking to you. You know, first I want to go back. I broke out my St. Mary's lacrosse T-shirt. Many might not know, a very, very long time ago, we were high school teammates.
What?
We were
That's
high
only
school
40 years,
teammates.
50 years old. Wait a second.
1986 champions.
Well, 1985. Dave is
85.
1985.
85, right.
And I'm 86. I was a year behind. We played with the great Paul Schmoller, legendary Hall of Fame goalie from Cornell. We had many other Division I players on there and great players. The Moses.
You guys get into Catholic school. Unbelievable this is already.
Well, that's what. Let me. I always,
Dave was in Catholic school. I can't take
Stephen kicks it off, but I like to go back because
of history.
Because many people know Dave's by reputation as a coach. Of course, he's far removed from his playing days, but his coaching careers continued at a very high level, a very successful level. But I like to go back because I think we found in doing these interviews and all, people like to hear like where guys really came from. How did it start for you? So from what I remember, and correct me if I'm wrong, I know you grew up in Hicksville, I'm pretty sure, right?
Yep.
And I think how I heard it was, you were a baseball player till like 9th grade or almost 10th grade. Is that true?
That is true. So I was a baseball player my whole life. Father coached me in Little League.
Big George.
In Hicksville, and played up until 9th grade, got to St. Mary's, and yes, Smallsy, they did accept me there. And guy by the name of John Espy, who you guys all know very, very well. He was a coach at Stony Brook and Duke, and
holy shit.
Reconnected with him with Team USA in 2014, I believe it was, and he was my JV basketball coach, and said,
Wow.
"Hey, why don't you come out and play lacrosse? Give it a whirl." And I really had a great affinity for John, so went out for the team, made it, and I was a midfielder, and he told me, "Here's what you do: you're going to be a crease midi. You are going to screen the goalie, and you're going to pick up ground balls, and you're going to play defense." And he said, "What you need to know is this: if they shoot high, duck. If they shoot low, jump."
Yeah.
I played my freshman year with Coach Espy, not very well, and then he left. And when he left, I was so disappointed. I went back to baseball. Played baseball in 10th grade, and in 11th grade, just decided, you know what? After I got bit by that bug, so to speak, I went back to lacrosse. I gave myself a long stick, understanding I was not very good offensively, and played in 11th and 12th, and then moved on from there.
Wow. But let me ask you this. So, when I saw you, and I did help out your last year of high school with Eddie Covid, the great Eddie Covid.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Did a fantastic job coaching you guys, and you jumped off the page, for anybody who watched the game. But your skill level with the stick, considering you started so late, how did you develop such tremendous stick skills?
Vinny, I tend to think because I started so late, I had such a passion for the game. And, kids today, they start when they're 5 years old and 6 years old. And by the time they get to high school, they've got lacrosse fatigue. And by the time they get to guys like us in college, they've been playing so long. They're beat up, they're tired. They've almost done everything before they get to college. So for me, it was really, in my opinion, one of those things where it was so new to me and I was so passionate about the game. I mean, I used to walk around my neighborhood with a lacrosse stick in my hand all the time. I used to pick up ground balls, used to, dodge trees and, parking meters. I mean, literally, that's the stuff that I used to do walking around the neighborhood. I had a great friend who sadly passed. You'll remember him, Chris Pace. His brother Peter was a great player at Chaminade and played at Yale.
Yeah.
Like literally, Chris Pace and I would go out to the park, right behind my backyard, and we would do one-on-ones. And since there was no goal in the park, we would just have a start line and a finish line, and we'd say, okay, you got to get from A to B on me. And we would do one-on-ones for hours. And, but again, since it was so new to me, I was just so excited. I couldn't get enough of it.
So when did it come about that like you understood the level of player you are, or like maybe Eddie Covid told you, you're a next level player. You could, you're going to get colleges looking to recruit you.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was a basketball player most of my life and played at St. Mary's. Not a very good one, but one nonetheless. When I had Coach Colvard, who, was terrific to me, I got a sense for what the game was really about. I learned the game from him and through him. But I don't know, Vinny, that I ever really realized until my senior year of high school that there was an opportunity to play a high level. My junior year, if I told you I wrote one coach, I probably wrote every coach in America a letter introducing myself, telling them that I was interested in playing lacrosse in college. And I used to get home, and the first thing I'd do was sprint to the dining room, which is where the mail was every day. And I would see if any letters came. And my first recruiting letter was from a guy named Tom Lianos from,
South End? Where was he at that time?
From Drew University.
Drew, he was at Drew, Tommy, yeah.
I opened that thing and I was like, I'm going to Drew. I mean, I wanted to go play at Drew in the worst way.
He was a genius, Tommy.
It wasn't until the Empire State Games, which after my junior year of high school, it was the first time they ever held the Empire State Games for lacrosse. They held it up in Syracuse. And it wasn't until after then that I actually got some attention and had the good fortune that some other local stars like yourself and Mike Caravana shared my name with some other coaches and said, hey, maybe this is a kid you want to take a look at. But I don't think I had any sense until maybe mid-November of my senior year.
So I'll tell you a funny story. So, that year that I helped out when you were a senior, and Eddie Colvard did a great job because I think I think from what I'm remembering, I think you only lost like 3 games. I think you lost to Sewanaka. I think I saw a 1-goal game at Sewanaka.
That was the only public school team.
Right. That was the one game and then you lost, I think, to St. Anthony's twice.
Yes.
And then had to play them in the finals. And Eddie Colvard, to his great credit, he figured he knew what he had with you, and he knew what he had with Schmoles in the goal. And you kind of played almost like a 5 zone with you kind of roaming and giving the shots from the outside, which Schmoles suffocated. And you ended up upsetting them, and the score was like 5-3 or something. It was very
yeah.
low.
Actually, it was a backer zone, and he took and Stevie will remember this. He took Fran Kasperzak.
Yeah.
And he gave him a chest protector and said, here's the deal. We're going to play a backer zone, and every time they shoot, you're going to get in front of the ball. Unfortunately, Fran forgot his chest protector the day of the game. So here we are playing this backer zone, and back then he's jumping in front of shots with no chest protector. And you're right, it was like a 5-4 game against St. Anthony's held at Holy Trinity.
Yeah, yeah. And so then you go into, you got, now let's just go back a little. When did you make the decision for Hopkins, and why did you decide on Hopkins?
Well, before we get into that, I should give you all the credit you deserve. When Steven...
Please, Dave, don't give Vinny any credit. Oh, no, I was praying. Go ahead, I don't want to kill you. Go, I'm sorry. This killed me for the whole thing. Go ahead, Dave. I'm sorry.
Sorry, Smallsy.
This is
You know, growing up, obviously, lacrosse was new to me, but there was a name that we all knew, and obviously it was you, Vinny. And as you mentioned, you helped out over at St. Mary's in my senior year with Paul Schmoller and guys like Richie and Mike Moses. And one of the one of the things I had an opportunity to do was do one-on-ones with Vinny. I mean, imagine that. Here I am, a high school kid, and you know, the greatest player on Long Island, and one of the greatest players in the world, says, "Hey, you know, kid, do you want to stay after and do some extra work?" You know, and I didn't know what it took to be successful at that time, and I was, you know, sure, I'd love to. And Vinny would stay with me a couple times a week, and for about a half hour, 45 minutes, you know, we'd grab a bucket of balls, we'd go out right in front of St. Mary's on the field, and Vinny would do one-on-ones with me and teach me, you know, what he was doing and why I was having trouble with this, and you know what was successful against him. So, you know, before I share with everybody how I made my way to college, you know, a big part of me getting there is, you know, attributed to what you did and how helpful you were during my high school career.
I appreciate that, and I was happy to do it.
Whoa,
because
that's
I know
pretty
how much you love
impressive.
it.
All right.
remember,
I heard it from him. Yeah.
I remember when, you know, at the beginning when that was going on, and I was telling, this was really kind of when we first started that last year, and I was like, oh, this guy's good, man. This guy is the real deal. And when he would do those one-on-ones and things, you know, we're driving home, and I said, he's pretty good, all right? And Vinny said, pretty good. He could start on Long Island right now. And at that time, Long Island had three world teams.
Yeah, I know. I went to practice one night after we had, had St. Mary's practice, and I was practicing with Long Island. And I said, there's a kid on my brother's team at St. Mary's. He could play for us right now. And they said, what? Come on. High school kid? I said, I'm telling you, this guy is a freak. I said, his stick skills, his ability to pick up the ball, physical, the whole bit. I said, he's the whole package. So they said, well, a guy that young. I said, well, it's not like he's young. So anyway, I put the summer league team together that year.
Yeah.
And Bob Vensak, may rest in peace, an all-world defenseman, played at Rutgers, played with us with Long Island. And I said to him, Vince, and we had Peter Olson. We really only had three defensemen, you, Peter Olson, and Vince. And I said to Vensak, I said, Vince, school this kid through the summer. He's going to Hopkins next year, And so the first time he said, oh, that's the kid you were talking about? I said, yeah, so you played the first game. I said, Vince, were you able to help him? He goes, help him? He says, I don't know that I could teach this kid anything. He goes, you were right. He really is good. And you really dominated that summer for a guy coming out of high school to play against in Caniac, which was mostly college or even club guys. And of course, our team dominated, and we had a lot of fun that summer. And Eddie Covid coached us.
Yeah.
Are you 5-year difference, Vinny? You and Petro? How many years?
10 year difference.
Holy shit!
Almost. And yet he looks 10 years younger than I do now.
Petro, that's enough out of you. You're 2 for 2 with him.
I have no hair, and he's still got the best head of hair on Long Island.
I always say, Dave, God, in that 1985 season, the best thing about you as a teammate, you talk about guys, you say guys you look for to make guys better around you. As a defense, you usually think of that as like an offensive player. Can the offensive player make the other guys play better around them? You did that for the offensive players from a defensive point of view. I don't think Rich Moses would have turned out to be as good of a player as he was, constantly having to go against you. Different guys getting to, see your game and having to feel that kind of pressure. It gave everybody confidence in a way.
Hey, Petro, I got a question. Can I jump in one question?
Go ahead.
I understand that you came along and you were good. Were you, in your mind, were you coachable? Or did you have a side of you where, I got this, I'm going to be a little arrogant or whatever? Were you coachable completely?
You know what, Smallsy? It's a great question. I would say in high school, I was very coachable.
You are.
I didn't know a lot about the game. And, what Vinny's saying and Stevie's saying is so true. I mean, the opportunity for a young guy like me to play with the likes of Vinny Sombrato and Vensak and Dougie Hall,
Brendan
and
Schneck.
Dougie Hall's got mentioned. Do you believe this?
I mean,
Oh my God.
that summer league team was a who's who
Yeah.
of Long
Wow.
Island lacrosse. And here I am, a high school kid, playing with guys that were on the world team and that were club champions. So, you want to talk about taking a young guy under your wing and helping him. That was
But you
usually
were coachable. That's pretty interesting. I guess SB and those guys really guided you in the right way as a young kid.
they
Wow.
did. They did. In high school, I was very
Wow.
coachable. I would tell you in college, I would probably have trouble coaching myself in today's day and age.
Oh, I got you. Yeah.
I had great coaches in Don Zimmerman and Bill Tierney, and they really taught us the game and taught us how to prepare and work. But I have to be real honest and say I can't imagine I was easy to coach. I think I was coachable, but when push came to shove, if coach said, "Hey, no over the head," I can tell you right now, I was going over the head just to prove him wrong.
Oh, shit. I knew he had a little grunge in him. Man.
I don't know if you want to define that as not coachable or
Did you get penalties though? Did you get a lot of penalties, young?
No, you know what, Smallsy, I didn't. I wasn't in the box a lot. I was probably in the box more in club lacrosse when you could get a little bit more physical and check a little harder. But, like I said, in high school, I had great coaches and I was very, I didn't know the game. So I was a sponge.
So you're still learning the game.
When I got to college, I was more than happy to listen and learn. But I would just say when I was challenged or told I couldn't do something or shouldn't do something.
Okay, so
I think the competitor in me came out and I said, okay, well, you're telling me I can't do that. I'm going to show you I absolutely can do that.
So how did you get into Hopkins? Just a quick on that one, and then we'll go.
How did I get in?
Not about getting in. Why did you choose Hopkins? You had to have other options at that point.
Yeah, you know what? I had a couple of schools. I visited West Point, which at that moment, there's no way I was a West Point cadet. Although today I would be privileged to attend a place like West Point. I visited Loyola and Dave Cottle, who was at the time starting his program there. I visited Maryland, and I was in love with Dick Adele, who we all know turned out to be, just a great man.
Yeah.
And then I went to Hopkins, and to be honest with you, I wanted to go to Maryland. I wanted to go play for Dick Adele. I really enjoyed him. I liked him. And my father convinced me to take my last visit to Hopkins. And when I went, I just, it was the right place for me.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason it was the right place for me was it was small. I needed individual attention academically. I wanted to play lacrosse and I wanted to win national championships in college. I was not as interested in the educational piece. And I will tell you, being at Hopkins helped me understand how important education was and really became interested in the educational piece. But I found a place where it fit me right. It was small. They cared about lacrosse. I thought Bill Tierney was, a terrific guy. I really liked Coach Don Zimmerman. And, it was just a better fit for me. And my father knew that.
So Tierney coached you 4 years? I didn't know that.
Coach Tierney coached me too, my freshman and my sophomore year. And then as I became a junior, he headed to Princeton.
Shit, so wow. Okay, wow. That's interesting, man. Wow.
And was Freddie
It was a
Smith,
good fit. It was a great fit for me.
Was Freddie Smith still there when you got there? No.
Yeah, so there was a gentleman there who, Vinny, you would know from John DiTomaso. Freddie Smith was, you always think of the wise old woman people talk about that just knows everything. Fred Smith was that guy at Johns Hopkins. A lot of people today probably don't know him or have never heard of him. Freddie Smith, in my 2 years with him, never called me by my first name. He always called me 4-3. He was he was the guy that knew everything about life. And I'll tell you a quick story. After my freshman year, I wanted to leave. I was unhappy. I wasn't playing much, and I wasn't playing very well, and of no one's fault but my own. And Freddie took me out to lunch, and I sat me down at the Cross Street Market, And I said, I want to leave. And he said, good, you should go. We don't need you. And that's the kind of guy Freddie was. Freddie knew exactly what I needed to hear. And, I was a young kid. I was 17 years old my freshman year. And I was waiting for him to say, no, please don't go. We need you. We got to have you. And he looked me right in the eye and said, yeah, you should go. You're not helping us. You can't help us. And I was baffled by his statement.
Wow.
And when I left that meeting, to be honest with you, I went home and I didn't know what to do. And I realized, after speaking with him, that it was no fault of anyone else's but my own, that I wasn't playing a lot and I wasn't playing well. And I think that's the day I decided to dedicate myself to being, a good college lacrosse player.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm baffled with that statement.
So what's interesting is, you had a strong team. You made it, to the finals a few times in your 3 years, right? And the great game, the '89 great game, between you guys and Syracuse. But what's interesting is, your career, knowing you from when you were in high school myself and watching your growth, and I knew what you would be, But what's funny is how, you coming into the college game and standing out the way you did, which, by the way, in my opinion, because I watched a lot of Hopkins lacrosse before you went there, and they had some greats, Dito being one, Greenberg, there was a lot of them, Willie Hazelhurst, there's a whole litany of guys. But it seemed like when you got there, like the way they played, they were great defenders, but nobody ever transitioned the ball into the offensive side of the field the way you did. It seemed like they gave you more freedom than anybody ever had before you because they understood your ability. You were dangerous with the ball coming down the field. You could create.
You're nice to say. I'll never forget. I got there, and one practice, Coach Tierney came up to me and handed me a short stick and said, "We're going to make you a short stick." And knowing I played midfield my freshman year, I got to tell you, it was the worst practice I think I've ever had. I got run by everybody, probably dropped every ball. But quite frankly, the credit goes to those coaches. They allowed me to be who I was. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And I challenged them probably a little more than I needed to, but they allowed me. Bill Tierney fought for me and, fought to kind of take the leash off a little bit and let me play a little bit more freely. To Coach Zimmerman's credit, he allowed it. And, you're saying, that they didn't have guys like that before. I'm sure they had guys like that before.
So they let you freelance, let you be Petro.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
But your junior year, right? He let you be free your junior year.
Yeah, they had guys like that. I mean, John Tommaso is one of the all-time greats. He's my idol.
Yeah.
Mark Greenberg was a great player. You mentioned, there were tons of great players that I'm sure could have done many of those same things. The game was a little different. So when I got there, the game was starting to change a little bit more. Fewer long sticks in the game.
Well, that's when Mitch is a little older than you, right? Steve Mitchell.
Steve Mitchell's 2 years older than me. I was
Mitch
freshman.
was a guy that, from his freshman year, what an athlete he was. And he had you guys had similar size, speed, stick skills. You were different in some ways, but a lot alike in a lot of ways,
Yeah, and there's a guy who kind of revolutionized the position of long stick.
Yeah, he
was the first team All-American long stick.
Wow.
He got up and down it. And again, I think more of the credit goes to the coaches for recognizing the game's changing. There's fewer long sticks in the game. The game's a little more wide open. And, he allowed Steve and myself to play a little bit more freely up and down.
And then you had Volks with you too.
Yep.
You had, Volks, who was great, another Hall of Fame player.
Yeah, you had Billy Dwan, who was a terrific player from Yorktown. There were a lot of them. But again, the game was changing a little bit. And quite frankly, it changed immensely, in 88, 89, 90 with the guys up north and Gary and Paul.
Well, that's the interesting thing that, you come in, you're a force, you're an all-timer on the defensive side of the field. And then you got two twin brothers, the Gates, all-timers revolutionizing the game. And that there's going to be this clash of the Titans at some point, whether it's in college or even post-collegiate career and all. And to
Well, how
watch.
about Vin? How about how that Clash of the Titans? When you really think about that, that culminates in 1989 with Hopkins needing the ball, and maybe 40 seconds to go in the game, and of course Gary's picking the ball up dead on up top, no less.
Right.
And Dave's on.
So Gary's a freshman and Petro's, for the fans, Gary's a freshman and Petro's a junior? Is he older?
Dave was a senior and Gary was a junior, I think. That's what he was. Gary was a junior and Dave was a senior. And that ball, Dave put that ball on the ground when they needed it. And that might have been one of the longest ground balls in the history of lacrosse.
Yeah,
because it
nobody
went
could get
from
the
where you
ball.
checked them, it went all the way to the sideline, then it went all the way to the attack zone, and I think Panutz picked it up. I think Matt Panetta.
You got a great memory, Steve, and that ball right at the midline felt like forever. It was in slow motion, and Matt Panetta was the guy that picked it up, and Coach Zim, because the rules allowed you to then, called the timeout as soon as he got in his stick right at the midfield line.
Right.
Hey, Petro, did you, when you were playing the Gates, because when they came onto the scene and stuff, in all due respect, I know your friendship later in life has emerged a tremendous friendship, but you had to not like them in the beginning because there was a lot of, not just you, there was a lot of stuff that I heard. And I remember stuff, people were envy of the Gates. And I remember saying to the people, there's a new sheriff in town. And these guys were taking off into being like, no, I'm being a little funny, but a lot of guys didn't like them because they were from Canada. I heard that.
You know what?
What about you?
Nah, you know what, Smallsy? I've always had great respect for Gary and Paul, and I have a great relationship with Gary. I was fortunate to work for him and with him for 2 years, and I'm grateful for the opportunity he provided me, but never disliked him. There was no reason to. I mean, they didn't say anything. These two guys were as talented, and with all due respect to Vinny, Gary Gate is the greatest player that I've ever seen, and Paul Gate was 1B, if you want to call it that. And these two guys were competitors. They took a beating. I mean, every game plan was to stop them. Every check was to, every time someone checked them, it was to hurt them. I mean, I watched that my whole career, and I've watched those two guys never say a word.
Yeah.
But like in anything else, great players, people either love you or they hate you.
Yeah.
And, Gary and Paul Gate were great players, and I'm sure there were plenty of people that didn't like them.
The Long Islanders were envy. I remember they were very envy of these guys.
They wanted to beat them, but they were.
Well, that's what I'm saying. They wanted to beat these two guys.
I can tell you the first time I ever played against the Gates was, in the 90 World Games in Australia, and we beat them. We won, and I saw them in the airport. We happened to be leaving at the same time. I said to Gary and Paul were sitting there together. I said, you guys are the two best players I've ever seen in my life. I mean, and I meant it, because they just, they were just freaks. I mean, they eat, sleep, and whatever else, lacrosse.
I will say this though, Dave, styles make fights. They were a perfect style matchup for you. You always guarded the lefties.
I don't know if I'd agree with that, Stevie.
Would you rather guard a righty or a lefty?
I'd rather guard a lefty.
Okay. And, to me, that was always I was like, oh, man, this is going to be good because I saw it make a lot of lefties frustrated, including a great Ray Gilliam one day, which I thought I saw one day what you did to him in the club championship. I was like, oh, boy, this is where Dave gets lefties. It's trouble.
So did you make All-American your junior year? Do you have any of that?
I made nothing my freshman year, but, probably, a big mistake in not doing the things I should have done. I made All-American my sophomore, junior, and senior year in college.
Oh, okay. So you did.
Didn't you get injured, though, as a freshman, Dave? Didn't you get a concussion or something?
No. So my junior year, I had a biking accident, and I was in intensive care for about 14 days at Union Memorial Hospital. I left school for that semester and was fortunate enough to come back in the spring semester and and be able to play.
You know, one of the interesting things that I want to, obviously you're playing, you go on to, win club championships. I think you play, we played against you. I think we got you once in '94, but you won a few times with Mount Washington, the club championship. You went on to win the world championships, playing in the world games.
Twice.
One of the things that guy, and you also played indoor on a number of teams. We would always run into each other on that circuit, but you made a pretty quick switch to shutting off as a player and diving into the coaching, even though you were coaching right away, and you could see that it was something that you were going to take an interest in. It was a passion of yours to make a career of, but you shut down the playing pretty quickly, or pretty quickly.
Stevie, I didn't have a very long, by today's standards, I didn't have a very long lacrosse career at all. I had 3 years in high school. I had 4 years in college, and I think I had 5 after college, and then that was it. And I had the pleasure to work for Dave Cottle, and that was the last World Games in 1994. We were fortunate to beat Australia in the championship game. And when I came back, that was it. That was it for me. I was, I hung up the cleats, and and I knew that I wanted to coach. And to be honest with you, and you guys will understand is I was really a part of it. And I don't know what Long Island was like, so I don't want to make any assumptions. But when I was at Mount Washington, the culture there was like right up my alley. We would stay after practice. And, after a good hour and a half go of competitive, transition drills and, a little bit of riding and clearing, man up, man down, and then some 6-on-6, we would stay and we would do extra work. So on those teams when I was at Mount Washington was Gary Gate, Paul Gate, Bob Scheck, Mac Ford, you'll remember him,
Yeah.
Mike Morrill, Ron Klausner, Eddie Stevenson. And we used to stay and we used to do one-on-ones, and literally we would coach one another. So we would do a one-on-one, and if I got a guy, he'd say, well, how'd you get that? And if a guy beat me or one of the other guys, it was almost like we were exchanging notes.
Right.
And it was like right up my alley. It was competitive. It was talented guys going after each other. And then when you were done, you'd go have a beer and you'd head home. And it got to a point where that started to kind of fade away. And everybody was starting to get on with their lives. They had jobs. They got married. They had kids. So those things were, no longer a part of the culture. And that's kind of when I got a little, I don't want to say disenfranchised, but it wasn't what I had hoped it would be. I would look so forward to going to practice. When I was at the University of Pennsylvania, I'd take the train back to Baltimore. We'd go to practice. Practice would end. I'd spend the night in Baltimore, and the next morning I'd get on a train, go back to Philly, to be at Penn. And practices weren't as competitive. There wasn't a lot of that, let's stay after and let's do extra work. Mm-hmm. So I started to, I don't want to say lose interest, but I was getting my competitive juices satisfied from the coaching perspective more than I was from the playing perspective.
How many years were you at?
I was with GW Mix there for 3
years. Because I remember you didn't have the game plan to stop me, Dave. We beat you at post. I had 6. It was like one of our greatest wins ever.
He was being kind to you as an ex-teammate. He let it go.
Oh, I like to think I'm a nice guy, Vinny. I'm not that nice a guy.
You would just remember him as that skinny kid as a junior at St. Mary's saying, this guy's not going to do anything.
Isn't it amazing that, tonight we're sitting here on this Zoom call, and Vinny, I'm on with you, and, and you were a big part of helping me become the player I was able to become. And my former high school teammate, who was this skinny redheaded kid who, turned out to be a pretty darn good lacrosse player.
God.
And then we got the Grand Poobah and Smalls.
Forget it. We got the guy knows everything.
Right. Well, we're still waiting. I'm still waiting for the T-shirt because when I met Smalls years and years ago, I think it was out in Vail, he was telling me, I'm making the shirt and it's Gary Gates going to be in the Superman outfit and Petro's going to have the stick. It's going to look like kryptonite. I'm still waiting for the T-shirt. Where is it?
I do have my Vail story. Can I tell my Vail story quick?
Smallsy, you are an idea man. I love it.
Thank you. I'll make it quick, Vinny. Go up to Vail, Colorado. I don't forget the year. Petro is up there, and this is when the Gates has arrived. And you know me, I want to create that because that's when everybody was a little zealous and jealous for Long Island. I go to new sheriffs are in town. So they told him, I remember the referee. They went and told the referee, listen, buddy, we're playing the championship game. He was playing against the Gates. There'll be no fucking penalties, excuse me. No penalties anybody's going to call. You're not calling any penalties. They went out the last day. I remember staying out the whole night with Pedro and a bunch of guys. And the last day, I don't remember who won. I forget that. But they were clean to each other. Him and the other guy, everybody was around. And that was the first time everybody saw this is a new era. This is a new era. You had Petro and him going one-on-one. It was just, it was a treat.
I've been in the game a long time. And I saw so many great ones, and there's always the next great one that comes along. There has always been someone who rises, whatever. But that era, that time, just the fact that you and them came like at the same time. It really exploded the game. It made it exciting. It really did. That was a big plus to the game.
I would say this, I consider it my good fortune to have played during that era and played and had players like Gary and Paul to try and compete with and try to cover. They bring out the best. You talk about Michael Jordan and Tiger Woods, and those guys make everybody around them better. They make their teammates better, their coaches better. They force opposing coaches to be better, officials to be better, and that's exactly what Gary and Paul did. So, I consider it, it was a blessing for me to have the opportunity to play against them because, quite frankly, they grew interest in the game.
Yeah, of course.
People wanted to see Gary and Paul.
100%. It's like Michael Magic and the Bird. Yeah. They were exciting.
Absolutely. So, when you talk about that era, you just have to talk about what those two did for the game and what Roy Simmons allowed them
it's amazing.
to do. Everybody wants to talk about what they did. There's not every coach would have allowed Gary and Paul Gate to be as creative and do what they do or what they did. And now you're seeing Gary do that with his teams in Syracuse.
Yeah,
Petro, is your memory better these days or better years ago? Because I want to give you a little. Who did the Gates play with? It was a kid. He actually just texted me. This kid just texted me. Who did he play with on the same line?
Listen, 1989, it was Gate, and Dumpson.
Yeah. He remembers. This is what it says. Tell
Rodney Dumpson from Port Washington, from Schreiber High School.
Yes! Okay, tell Uncle Dump loves him. I love Petro. Between Johns Hopkins and Cornell, that's what he writes.
You know what?
He loves you, man. Another guy.
What people don't realize, and there's a guy who was a game changer. When we played in the 1989 National Championship, all our focus was on, God rest his soul, John Zilberti.
Yeah.
It was on Gary and Paul Gate. Those were the biggest knowns. There were other knowns, Marichek and Burns and a couple other, Patty McCabe. But Rodney Dumpson had the two biggest goals.
He was the X factor
of that game. They win by one, and Rodney Dumpson has two goals, both ring off the pipes, and they were huge and backbreakers in that game.
Yeah. He could hum.
Wait, what do you mean? He scored? What do you mean? He had the last.
He scored two huge goals for them that wound up breaking our back. We lose by one, and I don't know that Gary had, it wasn't a 3 and 4 and 5 goal game that those guys were used to.
Right.
And to get that production from Rodney on that stage, it was huge for them.
So they three-peated, right? They're the first team to ever three-peat, from what I understand.
They weren't the first team. Hopkins had a three-peat.
Oh, they did?
Yeah.
Yeah, they won in 89, 90, and 91.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you won 1 year or no in college?
I won in 1987 and lost to those guys in 1989.
So you lost to them. Oh
Yep.
my God.
So
We
now,
had
Dave,
we
your career is over at Hopkins. You play world teams. Obviously, we were together on 2 world teams, which was great. We got to be co-captains together with the great John Tucker, another phenomenal Hopkins player. And you did play indoor with the Pittsburgh Bulls. I think your first year out of college, you took an assistant coaching job right away.
Yeah, so I took 5 years, Vin, to graduate college, and part of it was because of that accident that I had. I had to
Mhm.
leave school, so I was behind credits. So 1990, John Tucker offered me basically a voluntary position to coach the defense at the Gilman School.
Nice.
So while I was finishing up school, I coached those guys, fell in love with coaching. And then after we played in the 90 World Games, Tony Seaman, who had just taken over at Johns Hopkins, called me when we were overseas and offered me a job. I got paid a whopping $3,000.
Yeah. Wow.
I took a part-time job in an aluminum extrusion factory,
Aluminum extrusion.
so I could get
My
to
God, I
practice
heard it
at
all.
3 o'clock, and then it was 3 years at 3 years. I'm sorry, 3 years at Penn, 1 year at Loyola, where I really learned to be a coach under Dave Cottle, and then back to Hopkins for 3 years, Cornell for 3 years, and then Hopkins for 20.
Wait, you left Hopkins, then came back?
Yeah, so I left Hopkins in 91, 92,
Wow.
93, and was at Penn. Went to Loyola for a year after Penn. And then after Loyola, Tony Seaman brought me back to Hopkins as a defensive coordinator for 3 years. And then I got had the good fortune to get hired by Cornell for 3 years.
Right. And then
Holy
the Hopkins
shit,
job opened
you've
up.
done all around the world in lacrosse.
Well, that's one of the blessings of this sport is that you get to meet guys like you guys and travel the world and see the world a little bit.
Well, the game
Dave,
was,
you had lost suitcases in it. He's been in every hotel room in the country.
the
Oh
Well,
my God.
game was
Ballsy, now I
definitely.
got the best suitcase.
Yeah,
You still got stuff I gave you, Petro?
Smallsy, I got the best suitcase in the world. I got the Carolina suitcase you gave
You
me.
really use it? You really use it?
I use it all the time, my man.
The king lives on. The king lives on.
So,
Man.
definitely coaching was in your blood, and you made a great career out of it. And to be coaching at the school you played at, that had to be special.
It
And
was.
what I like about your whole talk here, Dave, is that you had mentors at your young age coming up that you learned things from, and along the way you pick and chose what you felt could work for you. And now you're at the other end where now you're a mentor to guys, really teaching them the game. So the thing kind of always comes full circle with the guys who stay in the game a long time.
Yeah, it absolutely does, Vin. And you know what? You have guys like you and that again took guys like me under their wing. I was fortunate, guys like Bill Tierney, Dom Starsia when he was at Virginia. I mean, I remember as a young assistant having conversations, with these coaches, traveling on the road from Baltimore to Wilton, Connecticut with Dave Cottle, and being giddy that the head coach at Loyola, while I was an assistant at Hopkins, had me in his car and we were driving and we got to talk lacrosse. But these are the guys that pass that on to us, and it's our job now to pass it on to the next group of players and coaches.
Yeah. Well, now you're down at Carolina with a teammate of ours, Joe Bresci from the '94 World Team.
Yes, sir.
And Joe's just a fantastic guy.
I love that guy, man. To hire this guy after think about that, all those years of coaching, to be confident enough to hire him, to bring him in, that says a lot about Bresci as
Smart.
a person, right?
Tells me he's smart. Listen,
Well, that's
they had a
what I'm saying.
long-time relationship. Obviously, like I said, they played together, and but yeah, I mean, there's still a bunch of the old time, what I'll call like the old time kind of coaches around. But I wanted to say something that hit me that now I'm trying to remember. So Steven said before about how much you've won at every level and all of that, but you're one of the few. You won a national championship as a player, and you won national championships as a coach. I think Richie Moran did that. He won a national championship when he was at Maryland, and he won as a coach at Cornell. Was there any? But did Bresh win a championship at Carolina, or he didn't?
No, no, he did not. Go ahead, Pat. I'm sorry.
Yeah, listen.
Joe won in Carolina.
Joe has won one as a coach here
I know
at
he was
Carolina.
as a coach, but I didn't remember if he was on one of those teams.
No, he graduated that year. Where Goldstein played. He was roommates. He graduated that year and became a coach. What do you call like an assistant guy that comes
So
on?
is there anybody else? Is there anybody else that's done it at the D1 level?
I don't know. And it's one of those things you don't really think about. It's certainly not about that stuff. And you'd mentioned, Joe, what a privilege for me to work for a guy and with a guy that I got a ton of respect for. I mean, I thought enough of him to have my sons come here and play for him. It's been a great experience. He's a terrific man. Forget the coach for a second. He's a terrific man, so that it's been exciting to be a part of. The Carolina family has been great. There's a lot of exciting things going on right now between, what's going on here with our lacrosse program and the recruiting that we've been able to do, in the start we've gotten off to this year, and then Coach Belichick coming here.
Yeah.
There's a lot of excitement, surrounding Carolina athletics right now.
Yeah.
And to be a part of it has really been pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean,
Hey, Petro, hold on, Ben. I'm sorry to jump in here. I gotta jump in here. So you're good friends with Coach. I mean, I know you said you were good. What's that like now with him being there? You get to see him for lunch once in a while. Do you go out with him? What's the story with him? Was he so busy?
And he's been pretty busy.
All right.
He's kind of had to hit the ground running and put together a recruiting class at the last minute. I have seen him. He's stopped over to the office a couple times. He is, as you all know, a huge lacrosse fan. We have a little crossover with some of our recruits that'll play for us and play a little bit of football. To tell you that, the amount of notoriety and the amount of excitement that he has brought to Carolina, to the community, to the athletic department, it's immeasurable. And
wow.
And what he's going to accomplish here, not just on the football field, but what he's going to do for a lot of the other sports, I don't know that you can measure the impact that he's going to have.
Yeah.
Wow.
That was definitely a home run for the university, no question about it.
Yeah, you think?
And we all said that you were the one got him there. Well, we started the rumor anyway. Don't worry.
Well,
Petro had to make a phone call. We'll keep that on the low note there.
So Dave, I was helping. Bill Barroza was coaching the Israeli national team, and I helped them a little bit with some fundraising. They had a fundraiser in New York, and Kraft's son was at the fundraiser. They were helpful with the money with the team and all. Nice guy. He played I think he at a Division III school, and we were talking, and Barroza introduced me to him. Belichick was still coaching at New England at the time, and I said to him, Coach Belichick, amazing guy, what he accomplished and all. I said, but football's not his first love. I said, lacrosse is his first love.
Wow.
So Kraft looks at me and he goes, "You're right." He says, football's his job. Lacrosse is his passion, is what he said,
I don't know that that's not true, Vinny. And I would tell you this, when he decides to step away from football, I would not be surprised one bit if, we saw him land on some sideline, whether it's high school, college. None of that would ever surprise me.
Imagine. It's funny, I wonder, now that he's down there, would you, well, I know how busy he is. Obviously, he's got his hands full. But I wonder if he sees things a little differently, if he has a different perspective on the game, lacrosse, in terms of maybe how to play defense or how to do something. It'd be interesting to get his thoughts on those kinds of things, because
Yeah, we've had those conversations, and to say he's knowledgeable about in regards to our game would be an understatement. He knows our games. You know what he is? He's a real historian. He knows the older players, the guys that have come before us, and he knows guys like you, and he's got a great affinity for the history and the traditional part of the game. But in terms of X's and O's, we've had some of those conversations. He's always asked really great questions. Why do you do this? And would you think about doing it this way? But that's why he's a great coach.
He's a
Not just a great
tactician.
football
The guy's
coach.
a
He's a
tactician.
tactician.
Yeah. Like I watch, look, Steven and I and Smalls, I'm a lacrosse junkie still. I watch as many games as I can over the weekend on ESPN Plus and all. And I watch sometimes, and I'm not trying to be too critical of certain coaches or any coach, but like I always believe in a team that like just can't get over the hump. Like, why don't you think outside the box and do something complete? You're going to just play good enough to lose playing the style that the other teams have better personnel. If you play a style that you're trying to match with a team that has superior personnel, you're not beating them if you're playing the same kind of game. Why not think out of the box and try to maybe, try to really transition, don't sub, have two-way midi type guys. And I know some guys do that. But if I'm coaching a mid-level team, not a team that's loaded with five-star players, I would do a lot of things, especially defense. I like coaching defense, to be honest with you. I look at it like, a team that I see that a kid is racking up a lot of points and I see likes to sit behind the goal or something like that. I put a short stick on the guy and shut him off. Just take the other team out of their comfort zone and what they. So I would think like a Belichick, he would be pretty good at that. I think you'd see a lot of wrinkles from a guy like that.
He made a living and won championships with not the most talented teams. They were the best team,
right?
And they may have had the best culture, and they were the best coach, but
Right.
they may not. I don't know that they had the best talent. And you watch what they do. They thought outside the box.
Yeah.
I asked him one time, how come you don't draft this or didn't draft this guy? He says, we don't get those guys. We have to play offense a little differently because we draft in the later rounds because they win
Right.
and they've had success. They're not at the top of the draft getting the number 1 or number 2 or number 3 pick. He says, so, we got to play with a fullback and we've got to play with two tight ends. And it's really interesting to listen to how he approaches the game, but why he approaches it that way.
Yeah, no, it is interesting. Like I said, I would love to, see his thoughts on when he watches a lacrosse game and what he would have done differently or a game plan that he would have compared to like, every other lacrosse coach. Like, how would he try to break it down, especially from a defensive standpoint?
I'm sure he'd break it down really well, Vinny, and he'd have a great game plan.
I think.
Hey,
so.
Dave, I got to jump in here. I got 3 teams, and I'm not going to ask you your picks because you are a coach at this time, whatever. But as a fans that are listening and stuff, I hear a couple people yelling, Cuse is going to run away with it. But you hear these things or whatever. As far as potent offenses, we still got a lot of games to go. Just take it for the first 6, 7 games. It looks to me maybe Cuse can have a dominant, right now in the beginning of the year. It looks like maybe they're going to have a great scoring on the attack and everything, a little bit different than in the past where it's going to help them a lot grow through the year. I don't see them losing many games, maybe 2 or 3 games, in my opinion. That's my opinion. And I'm a nobody, so.
You know what, Smallsy, you're not wrong. Gary's put together a great roster up there. They are very talented. They fit his vision for what Syracuse lacrosse is supposed to be in his mind and what he wants it to look like. They've got great creativity. They've got a great attack. The kid Owen Hiltz is, is very
super talented, right? He's a Canadian.
Yep, Finn Thompson, and they play with a great player in Joey Spallina. I mean, talk about a guy that does it all. Joey Spallina scores goals. He assists on goals. He rides. They got guys at the midfield now that can get up and down and play transition. They got a really talented face-off guy. But don't lose sight, their offense starts with their defense.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what I wanted to get into that. Thank you. Go ahead.
It starts from the other end of the field. And John O'Derna's done a really good job, and they got players like Billy Dwan, and they got the kid that transferred in from RIT, and a talented goalie. So they go from defense to offense as well as any team. And then if they don't get you in that phase one part of the game in the transition, they've got some really slick, creative, talented athletes that are super skilled. They pass the ball and play as unselfishly as any team I've seen. So for us, we don't get them till the last game of the year, so I don't have to think about them, right now for a while. But that is a very talented team.
Someone gave you a shout out. The kid said very special to you. Got to know you a little bit. You know who I'm talking about? Let's see if you know. I nickname everybody. His name is Fish. He's in the fish business.
You must be talking about one of the Leos.
Petro, you still got the brain, I'll tell you.
Listen, he's having a great
year. He loved you, Petro. They told me to say, little shout out. You changed his son's life. He said they love you like the mentorship. That's what I'm talking about. Like when you get into that.
I'm grateful for that comment, and
the mentorship. They were happy.
With Michael and those boys up there was wonderful, and Michael Leo Sr. is a good friend, so I love them, and nice to hear.
Yeah, Stevie, what do you got?
They're listening to you guys.
I want to talk Carolina, and particularly. Look, you
all right?
Talked to a lot of guys that that you mentored when in your time at Syracuse, and how people feel about you. I want to ask you the dynamic of coaching at the college level with your sons on the team. Is that a little different and interesting?
Sure it is. Listen, the kids here have been wonderful. I love them. We talked about Joe Bresci and what kind of guy coach is. He's put together a roster of some pretty spectacular young men and some talent ones at that. A guy that, everybody knows about is Owen Duffy. And you want to talk about a special talent. He is special. He's as explosive a Dodger that I have been around. I mean, his ability to giddy up and get up and go from 0 to 60 is unlike most guys that I've been around. So he's, it's nice to have him back and healthy and playing. My son Dom is playing alongside of him. And then there's another kid who doesn't get enough credit, Jimmy Matton, has really done a nice job. And then, what Coach Thompson is doing with these guys, at the attack in the midfield and getting them to play team ball, not play individual lacrosse, not play, it's about me. John Thompson has done a fabulous job. So it's been great. And the opportunity, Stephen, to coach my sons is, I'm grateful to Joe and coach for allowing me to have that opportunity. My son Nicholas plays down the defensive end, so I get to see him every day. And the other guy's a little bit more of a gunslinger, and it's probably good he's down in the offensive end. But
he is.
You be all over him. Man.
It's spectacular to be able to, after all the years of missing so much of what they do.
Wow, what a gift.
And missing so many games and scrimmages or practices, to be here every day and see them walk by the office or poke their head in, or, last night my wife and I took them out to dinner, and on Friday night we have team meals. We have dinner prior to the game together. It has been absolutely the greatest gift anyone could ever give to me.
You need that, man. That's awesome, man. That's special, man.
I watched the game that you played, again, against a very good Michigan team that did a lot of good things last year, and they're going to make some noise. They're a good team. And, I was impressed definitely with the attack. I was like, wow, I'm like, this has got a nice little chemistry here. If they can get the ball enough, they're definitely going to score. And it looked like you got some nice athletes in the middle of the field, and that's, when you have that formula, you're always going to be able to compete. Then it becomes,
they can squeak in the Final Four. Well, don't underestimate North Carolina, Stephen.
Listen, ACC is a gauntlet. I'm sure Dave will tell you that's like murderer's row of teams when you have to
crazy, right?
Those schools, every team, Notre Dame, Virginia, Syracuse. I mean, these are tough games, but what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. It may, and if you have that ability to compete, and I think from the looks of it, this year is a better year to compete at that level. They'll get their chance to do that. I'm excited. I think there's a lot of excitement around Carolina to really watch and see how they progress this year.
Well, they're way better this year than last year, right, Dave? I mean, you could see it.
Well, I don't know about way better. I mean, look, my guess, I would look to build on that game that you played against Duke last year at the end of the year, the last game of the season, I think it was for you guys, where everything just clicked that day. And you built that big lead. Obviously, they came back near the end. They scored a bunch of goals in a row. Maybe guys let down a little bit. But that showed the ability of a lot of these guys. Now, I know some of those guys from that team are gone, but you do have a good nucleus of them back. And to have a game changer like Duffy and the way your son can shoot the ball, and, it's not like he can't play with the ball too, but he's more known as a deadly shooter. You get him on that wing. If this guy gets him the ball in the right spots, he's going to shoot a high percentage.
How about the goalie, Dave? How's the new goalie having him as even like a fifth-year guy? Is it work chemistry-wise, like with the team?
It has. This is, as I said, this has been a really great group to work with. It is a different group, and every year is a new year. This group made it very clear that they wanted to make some changes. They wanted to do some things different culturally. They wanted to have a greater commitment, not only to what we were doing, but to each other. And to Coach's credit, he's done a great job with the leadership council and including them and talking with them about the things that are necessary for us to achieve success. We haven't talked about winning. We've talked more about what it takes to achieve success. Our leadership, our three captains, and Ryan Levy, Michael Jimfacaro, and Ty have been outstanding. So it is a very different group from a leadership standpoint. Vinny kind of referenced the Duke game last year. That was what we wanted to build off of and that week of practice was our best week of practice, and clearly it showed when we stepped on the field against a very talented Duke team. We kind of took that into the summer. The guys ran with it in the fall. They've been very workmanlike.
Yeah.
And then you add some pieces. We're a young team. A lot of the leaders are young.
Yeah.
They're first and second year starters.
Yeah.
And you asked about Michael Jimfacaro. He's been terrific.
Yeah.
He's one of the best goalies I've been around. But more importantly, he's been one of the better leaders that I've been around. He has a standard that he wants met, and we have a standard that we want met defensively. And Michael holds not only himself, but his teammates to that standard. So when we get in a drill, if we give up 2 or 3 in a row, that's not going unnoticed by Michael. He's stepping to the forefront, and saying, hey, enough's enough. We got to buckle down here. We got to get back to basics. And he's really challenged a younger group of defenders, but at the same time, led them with poise and when needed, put his arm around them and patted them on the back. So he has been a huge difference maker for us. And you had a guy like Spencer Wertheim from Cornell, who's a fifth-year guy, and he's running in the midfield. These guys and the experiences that they bring from other places have been very helpful with some of these younger guys that they're now paired with.
Right. Yeah. No, listen, I think you got a good mix of guys. I think you're going to be in the hunt. Obviously, you got to stay healthy. You could always forbid you lose guys. I hate when teams, lose guys to injuries, and it can really be a season wrecker when you lose a couple of key people. And it happens, so you got to be a little lucky too, But I think this is going to be a very interesting season. It's really going to be a battle. I think there's a lot of, it's funny. It's like, it almost to me looks like, and I'm the worst at picking games. I'm in last place again, it's like.
Oh, that's 4-12 the kid is. By the way, I won last year. The King is 4-12.
I went 4-12. Like, I always have this sense as a competitor. I tend to pick the underdog. When I see a team's getting 8 goals, I'm like, come on, you can't lose by more than 8 goals. And then these teams get slaughtered. It's like I say, how much do you practice and on? You could lose like this, but that's the nature of the beast. Maybe I don't take into account the shot clock. So a lot of these scores could get more one-sided a lot quicker than back in the day when you could have held the ball a little bit at least.
And the point spread is very hard to pick.
Or when there were 6 poles on the field,
right? That's a whole nother
horns
story.
and slowing the game down. I mean, this game, it definitely does snowball the college game now. If you're not getting possessions, I always feel, they always say defense. You're a defensive guy, Dave. Of course, defense wins championships. I say, but not if you can't score any goals. You gotta have guys have to score goals. If you don't have guys that can put the ball in the net, you're always going to have some trouble. You can manage the game, but you need guys. Not everybody can put the ball in the net. It's Syracuse kind of has, when you look at their team of being maybe strong, they have a lot of guys that could score goals. That's something that makes them dangerous. There's a balance there that maybe some other teams don't have. But I think that's why I like about Carolina's attack, because when they get the ball, they can fill it up. They're definitely tough to stop, and I think that's going to be where it all flows through. You'll have to get it in other places, but that attack is going to be where a majority of the offense comes from.
Dave, when's Alumni Day?
That's a good question, Smalls, and
Don't worry about it.
I think it's
know
April
that answer.
6th or something.
April 6th.
Stephen, you talk about the attack. This is a group that I think has come to understand that they benefit from one another, and the play of the attack doesn't happen without the work that the midfielders do, or the work of the midfielders doesn't happen without the work of the attack, and the offense doesn't flow the way it does without the work of the face-off guys. And the game has changed. We're playing in different phases now. You got the phase 1 in transition, and then phase 2 is all this subbing game stuff and all these little nuances that teams are employing. And then, phase 3 is 6-on-6. And to be honest with you, in today's day and age, you got to find other ways to score goals. And, we talk all the time here about special teams, about riding, clearing, man up, man down, and face-offs. And those 5 special teams are hugely important, because if you think you're just going to square off in the ACC and just win a game scoring goals in 6-on-6, you're probably sadly mistaken, and you got to find other ways to do it. And it's one of the reasons why I've really enjoyed being around John Thompson, is that he talks about not being scheme perfect, that we gotta have talent, we've got to utilize that talent, we got to put that talent in the right places, but most importantly, you got to get that talent to play together, and you've got to find other ways to score goals, in today's day and age.
Yeah, you got to have that trust factor, no question about it. When you get that familiarity and you get trusting guys, it tends to, open it up for everybody.
It sure helps, Vinny, when they're in the locker room and they really care about each other.
Yeah.
It matters when, a guy's going out to work and he grabs 2 young guys and says, "Hey, come with me," or a guy's coming to watch some extra D film and he grabs, a young guy that maybe isn't playing, and then another guy, and they come up and watch film. That level of accountability is something that we've been very excited about with this group. And there's a lot of talented teams out there. And quite frankly, for us, it's just it's all about taking it one day at a time. I know that's coach speak, but our focus right now isn't what happens at the end of the year. It's having a great practice tomorrow and getting ready to play a good Stony Brook team on Friday night.
Right.
Petra, what's your act during the day when you get pissed off, right? Because I've seen you mad back in the day. It seems like your personality is a little bit different. Are you going to yell at a kid, get on him so much? Or how are you going to do it? You're going to ride him a little bit? Like, what's your act today? It's a little different than it was years ago.
Yeah, you know what, Smallsy? Everybody is tough on these kids these days. They say kids are different. They're not tough enough. And I'll be honest with you, I wouldn't want to grow up with the pressures that these kids have today. I was talking to one of our guys walking back from practice, and, he's got a stats exam tomorrow morning. He's got a paper that's a huge paper next week that's almost already done. I was the guy that was waiting till the last minute to do that paper.
Last Minute Charlie, you and Vinny. That's your new name. Hey, Last Minute Charlie, we're coming down.
The world we're living in is very different, and I like
That's a good call. You see it at your level. Wow.
I like to think that, we handle each guy a little bit differently. There are some guys that you can put a boot in their tail and get after them, and they're better because of it. And then there are other guys, that don't respond to that as well.
Have you yourself learned that better to gauge that, like who you could really push a certain way, and then other guys that you gotta, do it a little different with?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would be lying if I didn't say I still have my moments. And I think that's an area where Joe, we all learn from each other. And that's an area Joe's been great in helping me understand. So, every kid's different. And what button works for one guy doesn't work for another guy. And, you got the key is to have strong relationships with these kids so that, number one, they know that you care about them. Because if they don't know you care about them, it doesn't matter what you say to them.
Right.
But if they know that you care about them and that whatever you're saying is coming from a place of love and that you want them to do well, then you can develop a strong relationship and figure out what button is the right button to push.
Right. Let me ask you this, because, in your coaching career, I mean, you've coached some of the greatest players to ever play the game, a number of Hall of Fame players, including Kyle Harrison, Rabel, guys like that. Do the kids today that you coach, do they ever ask you about those guys, like what made them successful, or do they even think about that, like as to like, you were on the front line with them, a lot of that you developed those players back in time. So do they try to, I'm always curious. Like me, I was always questioning. When I was out of school a year with Hofstra, and I went played for Long Island, I was 19 years old. I was with some of the greats: Ronnie Frazier, Tom Postel, Stan Kowalski, Mike Durrell. The list went on. And I always was like a question box, like, why do you do this? Why do you do that? Because I wanted to learn from them. Do the kids you coach now, are they that inquisitive in terms of like what made these other guys successful?
Yeah, some are and some aren't. When I was with Rabel, he wanted to talk to Coach Belichick and ask about, can I talk to Coach Belichick about what made Tom Brady great?
Right.
What made him a great leader? And Owen Duffy has asked that same question. Can I talk to him and find out, what it takes to be successful at the highest level? I mean, I was walking back with one of our freshman defenders today, and we were talking about this exact topic, about what it takes to be great and what the great ones do on those days where maybe they don't have their best stuff. Maybe they've been up all night studying for an exam. They're a little tired and fatigued. So what does a great player do in those moments? So I would tell you some of them do. I think we live in a world, Vinny, now where it's more of what's happening today rather than there's less interest in the past and more interested in now and the future.
Right.
And I think that's a sad thing. I don't think it has to do with our players. I think it's more of a societal thing. But yeah, we got some guys that ask, hey, coach, what was that guy like? They'll ask Coach Bresci, what was Will Bowen like?
Mm-hmm.
But I also think it's on us as teachers to talk to them about those guys and help them understand, who is Vinny Sombrato? And, I remember talking to my son on our way back after being up in Long Island last year and telling him about who Vinny Sombrato was and why Vinny Sombrato was such a great player for such a long time. So I do believe there's also responsibility on our shoulders to help them understand where our game has come from and who the great ones were and what made those guys great.
Yeah, because there's definitely a common theme with all of that. I don't care what decade you're in, there's a common theme for those guys who've, risen above to a certain level. And being on, world teams together, you and I and all those guys that were on teams, we definitely have that common thread amongst us. You know what I mean? You definitely, when you're lucky enough to play with so many good players, if you don't have any like real ego, and I always say you can't have an ego. You got to understand that you might learn something from a guy you might think, or you may be a lot better as a player, but that doesn't mean you still can't learn something from a guy. There might be some little thing in there that's going to elevate your game that particular guy just learned how to do better than you do it, and understand what it is and try to figure it out and add it
We're
to your
still
game.
trying to figure out and search Smalley for that. We're still trying to find that one little thing in Smalley.
Wow, I'm not
We
in a
just
good
wanted
mood.
to
Say,
remind you, Smalley's got 3 years of eligibility in case Coach Brushy is interested. Smalley does. All I can say is he's a champion. He played 1 year at Nassau. He won a national championship, and he played 2 years with Long Island, and he won 2 club championships. So whatever team he's on wins. Somebody should recruit this guy.
I'm undefeated.
He's
You
undefeated.
know
Never
what? He
lost.
needs to roll on a team, and Smallsy's got the behind the scenes, get the work done.
Yeah.
He's got the creative side of things done,
Yeah.
and everybody's got a different role, and no different than our team, your team right here. We sit here and you're doing this interview and you all have a different role
Yeah.
within this Zoom, So it's, listen, our goal as coaches is to teach people how to work within the framework and succeed within the framework of a team. That's no different than what we're doing right here or what you're doing with your own family.
Right.
I got to report something. I'm a little upset tonight. I have 4 courtside seats at St. John's, by the way. If you ever get a time down here. They lost tonight to Villanova.
Wow.
I predicted they would lose one. They got to lose one more before they go into the thing, whatever.
Yeah. Well, Mr. Pietramala was he worked at St. John's for many years. He's well known at
I brought it up. I remember you said that.
Yeah. I grew up going to watch those Chris Mullen and Walter Berry and Willie Glass and all those teams. I used to shag foul shots during lunchtime of my workday in the summer.
Nice.
When Chris Mullen used to shoot foul shots in the basement of the old Alumni Hall.
Amazing.
Wow.
Amazing.
My God, this is what the score was.
They're gonna have.
Wow, good
Well,
game.
you mentioned the teamwork. That's whether you're watching the Eagles in football or any sport really. Ultimately, it's the team that the guys that buy into the team that always have the most success. It normally ends up at the end of the day.
Communication, yeah.
Buy in and they
Everything, team spirit,
and formula.
everything goes with team.
Yeah, you can't win without it. It's impossible to win without that.
Dave, how many years are you going to retire? I mean, how many years in your box? I mean, I don't want you to retire because I love seeing you. You're bigger than life. I got to say to you, man, you really are. The guy's bigger than life. He really is.
Well,
Do you see yourself another 5 years, like LeBron James or something? He says another 5. LeBron, 45 years old.
Shoot, I appreciate you putting in my name even in a sentence with LeBron James, even if I'm carrying his water. Listen, I love what I do.
Wow.
I really love the staff that I get to work with every day. Coach Bresci's put together a great staff here with John Thompson and Pete Murphy and our director of operations, Scott Hodgson, and our director of personnel, and Rob Gutal. It's a great group of guys.
Mm-hmm.
And then the kids have been, fabulous to work with. So I don't look at it as I go to work every day. I don't come to work every day. I come to do something that I love to do.
Amazing. I'm like, how does he do it?
When I stop loving it, that's when I'll get out and I'll go do something.
Petro, I find it amazing. How do you do it time and time again? Go to a hotel room, get out. There were times you're racing back. It's got to be mentally crazy for you.
He loves it. He loves what he does.
Well, you always loved it. There had to be a time when you weren't doing as good, right? And you kept doing it. How do you travel every week back and forth, hotels? I'm sorry, that's insane. I give you credit.
Smallsy, there are people that have it far worse than
sure.
I do.
That's true. Yeah.
How do you not feel blessed that you get up in the morning, you get to go work with young men and hopefully be inspirational and help impact their lives in a positive way. You get to do something you love, which is compete. You get to put together a plan and see that
Fucking
plan
unbelievable.
come to fruition. I don't see
Well,
anything.
you don't see it as work then.
No,
You could go another 10 years.
listen, it's tiresome, and look at every coach, when you put your heart and soul into something, it's tiresome, but it's not work in any way, shape, or form. And, like I said, when you get to a point where it becomes work, that's when you get out. And that's when you go find.
I told Vinny I'd like to start coaching, man. Maybe you can get me on the squad. How do you fill out other applications, Vinny, for this?
I don't know.
How do you?
We'll see at the end of the year what jobs open up for you, Small.
Yeah.
I'd love to be coaching. Listen to me. Be shot out of a cannon, man.
Well,
All positive, though. They got to have
Dave
it.
came a long way from that tall, lanky dude with the mullet running around, scoring goals.
He's the top of the world.
Long time ago, Vin. Now is a lot less hair where I want it, more hair where I don't.
Okay, I want to get into a couple.
You did have pretty good skills with the short stick. I remember you scored some goals on the indoor.
He was great.
You were good in the indoor with even score. You scored goals. You had a good stick.
Well, again, I'm flattered that you would say that. I wasn't a very good indoor player. I enjoyed it. I loved my teammates. I loved the whole thing.
You had a fun team.
Imagine playing in today's day and age with the PLL.
Yeah.
Imagine having that opportunity, Vin, and how exciting that would be as an athlete.
Yeah. Yeah. So
I think the players of today, I mean, all due respect to the Gates, I get the whole picture with the whole montage. But like I said to Vinny, you got players now from number 5 to number 12 that are much better today than they were years ago. I know I'm going to get a lot of critics come out on me, but I say today they're much better than years ago. I think they would beat the players of years ago on just that alone, from number 6 to number 12. Those players. 1 to 5, yes, the Gary Gates, the Dumps, they were all great. But you go down the road, I think today, I have a hard time saying that these teams that play pro of years ago, they're going to beat them years ago.
You can only put 10 on the field at any one time.
Yeah.
There are teams that could get by with 15, 16 guys. Not that other guys don't add something to it, but, we always he loves having this conversation, Smalley. And I tell him, and other guys have said it, that the best guys back in 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago would still find a way if they were playing. They were athletes. You know who the athletes were. Some of these guys, they were 3-sport athletes in high school. They were tough. They had some size. And size don't even, you had small guys that were so skilled, So, I mean, yes, when you look at these games today, I watch games. I tell some of the young kids sometimes, kid makes a mistake and they get down on themselves, So I tell the kid, go home, look at the box scores for the college games this weekend, and look at how many turnovers there are in the game combined for the two teams. You'll never see it less than being like 20 to 25. Each team has,
easily,
right? So whether they're caused or whether they're unforced errors, so I say, you just got to keep thinking about making the next play, because there's going to be mistakes in this game. It's the guy who could put it behind him and make the next play that's going to succeed. If you get scared because you turned the ball over one time, then you're not going to play to your best. Just play.
You know what? I would say this. I think great players of yesteryear would be great players today. And I think great players today would be great players, of yesteryear.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason why they're great. And I've always been careful, and I don't love comparing generations and saying, well, if this guy, if Michael Jordan played then, or John Havlicek played in today's game, he wouldn't be as good. Everything's different. The game is different. The rules are different. The technology that these guys play with, the sticks, the gloves, are different. So when you start to compare those things, I just think great players are going to be great players in whatever generation they're in.
No, but because I always relate it to the guy's IQ. I think if you're a high IQ player in any era, you're going to be able to do damage because you're high IQ. You understand how to get it done. And then sometimes a guy's heart is immeasurable. Some guys just have such a will to win, and they're going to make themselves into something no matter what, But yeah, I get Smalls' point with so many more kids playing today, and the stick, the innovation in the sticks and all of that. There's at times where you see them do things that's just freakish, But
well, I think the college game personifies it. You look at the teams that are now talented, and years ago it was 4 or 5 teams that were competing for it every year.
yeah.
And now you're seeing teams from mid-major conferences almost getting to a Final Four. You're seeing different teams getting to a Final Four. You're seeing different teams having success. I just think the game is a different game now, and to compare it to back then, I think it's hard to do. Yeah, I would love to see. There are some great teams from the 90s, the 80s, the 70s, the 60s. I mean, what kind of player would Jim Brown be in today's day and age?
Forget it. Forget it, Petro.
You know what I mean? I mean, what kind of player would Will Bowen, who played here at Carolina, been 10 years ago or 20 years ago? He'd have still been a great player then too. So I just think the good ones are good for a reason, and I don't think that's time sensitive.
Right.
All right, Stevie, you got one, because we're gonna get into the favorites things.
What do you want to get into? Go ahead.
No, just we're tying it down. So the bullshit talk here, the fun thing that the fans like, Petro, after a fucking game, and you just got excuse me, 2 curse words of it. You got a full ass whooping. You got whooped up. No excuses. You go home. What is your go-to meal? Are you gonna have like pork and beans? Are you gonna stroll up a can of tuna? What are you opening up? And you're going off because you gotta eat. You gotta eat. What are you eating? Are you ordering the chicken cutlet palm? What are you ordering at night?
Well,
come on.
It's a good question, but the answer is I'm not going home. If we're getting what you just said in a whooping like that, I'm not going home. I'm coming back to the office. We're downloading the film. I'm getting a Coca-Cola fountain Coke.
Holy shit!
And I'm sitting like most good coaches.
And that's the
I'm
truth.
Sitting there watching that film. Figuring out what the heck went wrong.
That's cool. But all right, then I'll ask you one other thing. I don't want to bring up my friend, my good, very, very close friend, Carcatera. What's his first name? He's a big ice cream lover. What would be your go-to ice cream of today? Or do you like every kind? He likes everything. Like Paul Carcatera.
I'm a mint chocolate chip guy.
Oh, shit.
Carc said he eats ice cream 365 days
65 days a year. How many days would you think you eat it? Every other day, 180?
No, I could eat pizza every day.
Pizza?
I could eat pizza every day, but no, I'm a mint chocolate chip, although I went to Italy on my honeymoon.
Wow.
And had gelato, and I had a pistachio gelato, man.
Best.
I'm a pistachio fan now. All of a sudden.
Best.
Wait, mint and pistachio is a little different. He likes the color of the ice cream. But Clark really said, he said him and his wife, it's not a particular brand. Is it Haagen-Dazs for you, or does it really matter so much the brand? It could be.
Doesn't matter. I'm not picky that way. As long as it's that flavor, I'm good.
Wow, so fucking pizza guy. Yeah. So when I come down there, I'll bring some pizza with us, right?
Listen, pizza. They're starting to say now, pizza's better than cereal for breakfast. I saw that on social media. I've been saying that for years.
Cold pizzas.
What was your place in Baltimore? Mama something. What was that place down the road?
Still my place, my buddies. We're going to go there when we play up in Baltimore next weekend. It's called Sammy's Trattoria.
Yeah,
it's not still there.
It's still there, man. He's got 2 of them, and it is the best.
Yeah.
So what's your go-to sandwich here? What do you eat there? What do you order?
If I go there, I love their veal involtini. It's veal that's got prosciutto and mozzarella that's wrapped inside the veal in a marsala sauce.
Wow.
Well,
man,
if you come to the island, you got a lot of options. We get you any way you want.
Vincent, he's got to get back to
I got a place I like. I like Vincent's Clam Bar, man.
Okay.
They're good to the lacrosse community. Food there is excellent. The portions are even better.
Yeah, the guy Bobby's a great guy. Such a good guy.
Well, shoot, I had to ask you to get me a reservation there.
Bobby, do it
the
for
last time I was
Second,
He was too happy to have you there.
You know what, Smallsy, I challenged Vinny, and he said, well, I know the guy there. I said, well, if you know him, I can't get in. It was, I think it was a Friday night, Vin, and I couldn't get in, and I wanted to take my wife and my parents there.
Right.
And one call, and I got a reservation from.
Vinny made a call for
Shout out to Vincent. Shout out to Vincent.
Shout out to Bobby Marisi.
That's right.
That
He's
means
the
Vinny
St. John. He's at all the St. John's games.
Yeah.
Bobby's always at all the St. John's games.
Yeah.
Hey, Petro, you want to hear something crazy? I don't know how I'm going to say this, but it's going to be on the kinder side. When we were having you guys, we were hosting you last year. You were coming to Long Island. You haven't been here many, many years, and you're playing Hofstra. And we organized a dinner, and we were figuring out where we were going to have it. Vinny, what was the name of the place we had it? 110 Steakhouse, right? So I said, Vinny, call him. He wanted to charge me $100 a plate. I said, this ain't a wedding. We got 72 people here. So Vinny goes, I got it. He started at 100, right? I go, Vinny, this ain't happening. I'll walk out with the check. What do we get it down to, Vinny?
I don't know.
We got it to like $30.
No, he was very good. He was very good to us.
Like $5,000.
We'll give him a shout out. Tony Scott was very nice to us.
It was a great trip to the island. For me, obviously, it's always great to come home. I love Long Island. It's
special, right? It's
great
special
to me. And no better food, no better bagels, no better pizza, no better Italian.
God almighty.
But it was great to come up there, and you guys treated us like kings. I know our guys were really appreciative of the opportunity to meet some of the alums and some of the friends at Carolina Lacrosse. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was great.
Well, Petro, I'm happy to say, can I actually call you a friend? Good friend now?
You can call me a friend, Smalls.
I can give a call for a coaching job maybe one day in the future.
Maybe.
Never say never. Remember what Jordan said? Never say never.
So we're wrapping up where we get to our point where we do our shout outs. So my shout out, I guess I'll go first.
You can have 2 or 3 shout outs to anybody. Well, you go last.
Shout out, I'm going to go back to St. Mary's. I'm going to give the shout out to my man Eddie Colvin in honor of having Dave on with us. Eddie, I saw Eddie. I hadn't seen Coach Eddie for a lot of years. And I happened to be over by Chaminade. My son was over by a camp over there. And he and Colvin was coming to see Pomps over at Chaminade. And I was like, wow, I hadn't seen him in so long. He didn't really look that much different, older, gray. But he was telling Smalley, you'll love this. I don't know how it came up, but he remembered this story because he always talks about Dave. No matter what, Dave is coming out in some fashion when you're with Eddie Colvin. It's so great. The time, and I don't know if Dave will remember this, when Dave almost blinded him. He almost blinded him, Smalls. Our coach.
Really?
So we're doing extra man. We're at Bar Beach. Because for whatever reason, I don't know what was going on at the field, but we used to practice at Bar Beach. And Dave had his pole. He was playing with a wooden shaft. And we moved it nice. We got it across the crease. We finished. We scored the goal. And he's such a competitor. He gets so angry. He smashes his stick across the top of the crossbar. The top of the stick breaks off. And it goes flying across the field. And the sharp end hits Colvin, gets him like right by the eye.
Oh my God.
And he's a big guy. He does a pirouette. And it looked like he was like on ice skates. He did like a double pirouette and then fell down. And we were like, oh my God, I never saw anything like that. But
man, Eddie.
That is a true story.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you, I got the death stare
I bet.
after that. And that's when I knew he loved me.
That's right.
He loved you.
Because if he didn't,
He loved you.
I'd have been walking back from Bar Beach and he'd have been chasing me in the van.
Who do you got, Vincenzo? Who's your shout out?
Smalls, you go.
I know it's going to be a little crazy. I got a shout out to Levittown. Eddie, Kevin, and Bobby Cook family. They were like growing up next door to me. My brother was best friends with them. They got me started in lacrosse. I got to throw out to Bonzo, Jamie Allen, Jeff Goldberg, Keith Tittle, and Dougie Hall. That's my shout out.
You're going to get the double shout outs now.
It's 11 times, that's right.
Shout out
every
to
week.
Levittown.
Every week we
That
got to
equals
about
one to me. 1 and 1 is 1. You know that.
All right.
What do you got, Vincenzo?
I'm going to give my shout out that he rest in peace, Mr. Bill Miller from Manhasset, father of that great group of Millers. Stephen went to school with one. Dave probably went to school with one. I knew Eugene from when we moved to Port Washington. But Mr. Miller,
Dean was backing up Schmoles.
right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And
So
Patrick
Mr.
was
Miller
younger. I
passed
don't know if
away.
you went to school with Patrick, but I went to school with Patrick.
He meant so, and Blake, of course, played with us so many years.
Blake.
And Mr. Miller was just a fantastic guy. He was, in the line of Harvey Cohen, John Phillips, those kind of guys. What he did in Manhasset was immeasurable. The family so well known because of so many kids that they have. Tomorrow they're going to have a wake and a service for him. So I'll go. But I just remember him, and in his younger days, if you were driving down Plandome Road, he used to run a lot, Mr. Miller. I don't know, he was running marathons. I used to see him running all over the place. Port Boulevard, then Plandome Road. He loved to run, and he had a good life. He loved his family. They loved him, and the Manhasset community really loved him, and he meant so much to that community. So may he rest in peace. I think he was 90 or 92 or something. He was up there.
You know what, Vin? He played, Stevie said, Dean played with us at St. Mary's, and I used to sleep over the Miller house, and they had so many kids. Dad owned a couple of McDonald's,
right?
And we would all want to sleep over there so that on Saturday morning or Sunday morning, we'd all have those frozen Egg McMuffins. You'd have all the making for the Egg McMuffin, and you would wake up, and Mr. Miller would look at you and be like, all right, what son are you here with?
Yeah.
But a great man.
You just hope that, there's guys coming up behind these guys to replace those kind of people because they meant so much, the guys like Bill Miller, to so many people, and they're not only as, one thing is coaching and putting that kind of time, because it is a lot of time that these guys put in, but just the mentorship and somebody to look up to that kept kids somewhat level so they didn't go off the deep end. These guys were great, and Bill Miller is right in that mold. So God bless him. My condolences to the family, and he'll be missed.
Dave, are you home or in your office?
I am in the office, Smallsy.
He's in the office!
I
can't believe it!
Like you're in the office.
Shit.
I am, yeah.
At North Carolina?
Yeah, I'm in the film room right now.
Holy shit, man. That's awesome. So, Dave, who you shouting out to? You don't have to pick anybody if you don't want. But.
I'll give you two. One is one of my former players, a kid named Marshall Burkhart. Sadly, just lost his mom. I just learned about that. He just flew out to Ohio. His wife is they're expecting in the next couple weeks. Good. So the hope is that things will wait till he gets back. But a shout out to him and his family for their loss. And then the other one would be to all the guys that I've had the privilege of coaching and the young men I get the privilege of coaching right now. I mean, that's ultimately, that's the reason why we're here. And that's the reason why we're talking. And it's the reason why the game's so great. So a shout out to those former players and current players that I've had the privilege and have the privilege right now to work with.
You clearly made your mark, Dave. You're still doing it. You have a long road behind you. You've excelled in everything. You're definitely an icon of the game. There's no question about that. Nobody doesn't know who you are. You're the likes of all the top guys, the top echelon guys. There's so many great ones, but you're right in the pantheon of the top.
Well, how about that? My name goes along with the word pantheon.
Yeah.
There you go.
Who would have ever thought that? Huh?
Got into the thesaurus tonight.
Vin, do you accept Venmo? I'll send you the money for saying that when we're done.
Dave, you got to remember, I did go to Chaminade. I maybe didn't finish Hofstra, but I did go to Chaminade.
Hey, Petro, just a very last-minute quick thing who I got fond of over the course of time. And it was so nice to me when I used to go to these little bars in North Carolina. I didn't even know who they were. These Levy family, Levy. Yeah. Like the father... Eddie Levy, I got to know well. The father's an amazing guy. And then the sons, I said, who are these good-looking kids? and now they're playing on the team. It's the Levy family.
Yeah,
Are they all playing I saw a picture. Is that true that even the girl now plays in North Carolina?
Yep, the daughter is a freshman here, and Ryan Levy is a captain for us, and Alec Levy, who a little banged up right now and making his way back, but
He's banged up.
Great family. The kids are spectacular, and
just the nicest family. It's like unbelievable. It's like give them a shout out too.
Really super people, and the two boys that we work with here are spectacular.
Amazing kids, whatever.
Great family.
All right, Petro, we love you, man. Thank you for everything, man.
Dave, thanks. We appreciate you. Love you. It's great seeing
Don't know what else to say, man. We're doing a lot
Great episode.
We go on music and then just hang on there for a minute.
Yeah, hang on. Don't hang up.
You guys are the best. Thank you very much.
Oh, give him a big standing ovation for the Petro. Petro Marley. You made it, Petro.